And we're joined by Kyle Borrowman and Terry Reese from the Invasive Species Center, who will begin their presentation. So thank you for joining us, Kyle and Terry.
Great. Thanks for having us, Kelly. And Terry, maybe I'll start us off. I'll share the slides here, and we'll start working through it. And just for a little distinction too, Terry is working for Invasive Species Center, and I'm actually with Nature Conservancy of Canada, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But a great little partnership that we have on going on. And I'm a little bit more familiar with Teams, so we'll see if I can share this. Yeah, looks like I should have no issue. Kelly, are you able to see that up on the screen?
Yeah, you're good to go, Kyle.
Okay, great. Um, okay. Okay, so we'll do our best here. Uh, the Ontario Phragmites Action Program, you might have heard of us, and if you're attending the AOR's trade show conference in a couple of weeks, we'll also be there with a booth. Um, Throughout the uh, presentation, we're going to cover a few things. What is the program, and um, the strategic framework of how did we get here, how we're breaking it up in terms of regional coordination, what we're calling Phragmites management areas. So, identifying those areas at scale that we can work together to do some control, as well as a little bit about the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund and some other neat tools that we have going on, like genetic testing program through the OPA program. So I'm going to try to keep the acronyms to a minimum too. We seem to get pretty excited and use a lot of those. Just curious with my screen, are folks seeing everything okay? Terry, give me a thumbs up? Looks good, great. And so take us back to last year, just about this time. Uh, the province of Ontario invested in this program, and it's a 3-year program, new investment of 11 million over these 3 years, kind of ramping up over the time to create this new program and coordinate and enhance really the Phragmites work that's happening on the landscape across the province. There's lots of people doing lots of great work out on the landscape, and we'll talk a little bit about that, about how, we want to make sure that we're not siloed in the work that we're doing. The work that we're doing is likely being happening even across the roadway, at our neighbor's property, and trying to find ways that we can work together to be able to, we're all rowing in the same direction in that respect. The program allows for coordination across various jurisdictions and includes important actors, including our municipalities like yourselves, conservation authorities, indigenous communities, NGOs, and other property and rights holders as well. So the one acronym I'm going to use probably a bit is OPA. So what is it? Ontario Phragmites Action or OPA, if you will, as well, is what we're calling the program. And basically, what we're hoping to do is support the effort that folks are doing with that landscape scale Phragmites control through this program. So, helping to fill in the gaps, creating working groups, and try to harmonize some of the efforts that are taking place across the province on that local scale with different types of Phragmites management. The purpose of the Maybe I'll get rid of that. Purpose of the OPA, as I mentioned, landscape scale Phragmites control. Uh, we've got a distribution map that kind of shows some of the historic Phragmites across the province. We haven't really, I don't think this presentation really goes into much detail about what Phragmites is, but what it is that tall reed that you see. You'll see tons of pictures of it. Often see it in our roadsides within the ditches. Can become a major issue for lines of sight, issues with drainage, things with, even fire hazard as well. There's been a couple of major fires that have happened within large Phragmites cells this spring as well, to kind of show the concern. They burn really quick and really hot. But really, there's a lot of work that's been done on the landscape to manage Phragmites, especially at that local municipal scale. And so, really trying to find ways that we can support the efforts that are going on and enhance some of that work. Looking at this map, we've got southern Ontario. That's where historically Phragmites has been found. We're starting to see it up in northern Ontario as well. So it's increasing its range into these new areas. It can be very costly to deal with, especially in the Southwest where it's been, over 2 decades where it's been present. It's really strongly established. It's a lot of effort to deal with that. So what we're dealing with in the South is very different than what we're dealing with in the North. A lot of what we're seeing actually in northern is along those provincial highways, where it's just starting to arrive along that, traveling along, say, on equipment or on vehicles moving to those new areas. And so in areas in the north where it's just becoming established, it's very cheap. It's a lot cheaper for us to deal with it before it becomes a major issue like it has in the south. So really, the reason I'm mentioning this is each region has its own unique strengths and challenges and things, and so we're working on kind of that provincial scale, but with that regional or local idea in mind of trying to get people to work together in a way that is going to manage the issue that they have, but realizing that it is a larger problem that doesn't see geographic boundaries the way that we do, or property lines, for example. A good example here. This picture in the bottom, you can see there's some great road work or roadside spraying that had taken place. But as you can see to the left of that, we do have a pretty large infestation of Phragmites. It is a annual plant, or sorry, perennial plant that each year grows from the roots. So, that little bit of treatment there likely isn't going to kill off the rest of the Phragmites here. So, these are kind of some of the issues that through the program we're hoping to identify and deal with. Being able to work across property lines, collaboration across different rights holders or landholders in order to have that landscape scale impact. And so looking at some regional examples of that too for where some of this landscape scale work has taken place. And really, it is really to try to successfully manage this with a bunch of partners involved because it does take a collective group effort to do the work. As mentioned, these jurisdictional boundaries can be create obstacles to implementation, and having that coordination through that local and regional lens, getting folks to the table in those Phragmites management areas that Terry's going to talk to makes a big difference in terms of the planning and the effort going into the final outcome, which is hopefully managing Phragmites. And at scale, there has been some really good examples of some of this work taking place. A couple examples here. On the left, we've got the Oliphant Fishing Islands area, and this is in Lake Huron, just south of the Bruce Peninsula. And these are some islands that have seen multiple partners that are working together to do some management in this area. Throughout the Bruce Peninsula as well, there's nature conservancies working with the municipality, as well as with the upper and lower tier municipalities, as well as with the indigenous communities and other land trusts and groups that, like Parks Canada, groups that have large tracts of land that are managing Phragmites. So kind of taking that approach uh, more where I'm at here in Norfolk County, off to the right here, we have a map of the roads work that's taken place here. And this is through the Long Point Phragmites Action Alliance led by Nature Conservancy. So really that project started back in 2015, 2016 with treatment of Long Point and Turkey Point natural wildlife areas, as well as the provincial parks, managing those coastal wetlands where there was tons of Phragmites. From there, the working group extended to start doing systematic work of managing the roadsides throughout Norfolk County, as well as through funding from the federal government, being able to do a private landowners Phragmites control project. So through that, we've got a team of a couple of staff that go through, you know, different blocks or wards of the county, identify areas that we're going to manage in advance, reach out to landowners. We've had over 400 landowners sign up for treatment on their private lands to help really, help secure the effort that had taken place in the natural areas, as well as the investment of the county to manage frag on their roadways. So it is possible to do the landscape scale work. These were great examples that we had. Looking at Long Point alone, we treated over 22 hectares of Phragmites, and what's really interesting is once you kind of deal with those bulk areas, it's managing those other areas that things like roadways are ones that we can have a lot of success early because they're easy to access, and they do it can be very impactful. So really, trying to what we want to do with this program, we've got some tools and some support to help develop those working groups at that regional scale of what we're calling uh, the Phragmites management areas. And we've also been busy in advance of this to prepare. And so through the Green Shovels Collaborative, which you might have been aware of, it's a group of like-minded nonprofits that do environmental work. So Federation of Ontario Cottagers Associations, Nature Conservancy Invasive Species Center, Ducks Unlimited, and the Ontario Invasive Plant Council had gotten together, developed some of the core guiding documents. So we've got a strategic framework of how to coordinate and manage Phragmites over at a landscape scale in Ontario, develop some cost benefit analysis information to help guide potential partners like say municipalities with some of the planning and funding application work as well, and giving some proof to the cost that's the benefit to doing this work. A regional plan guidebook, which is kind of like in a sense, like a very good guiding document of how to develop a working group, how to manage, what to look for when managing Phragmites and developing that landscape scale program. This is a really great document and had some trial Phragmites management area working groups that we started in the last year. And from there, let's talk a little bit more at that local scale. And I'm going to pass it over to Terry to talk about the Phragmites management areas that we have under the OPA program.
Thanks, Kyle. That was a great introduction. You usually aren't shy about talking about the great work NCC's done, but when you said there was 22 hectares under active management, I think,
Yes,
did you mean
2,200 hectares. My apologies.
2,200?
Yeah.
That's a little more impressive a number, right? Incredible impact there. And if you can ever check that out, the before and after, it's quite remarkable. So, good morning, and thanks for attending on the morning of after the long weekend. Yeah, Kyle sort of introduced a little bit about the challenge of Phragmites and what we're trying to do on a sort of more coordinated perspective. So the approach that the Invasive Species Center and Nature Conservancy took, and why the MNR, Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources, was interested, was that we would pull together, spend some resources to pull together the groups that are all inclined and interested and doing work and want to do work. So the concept was these Phragmites management areas. So that meant that we would facilitate the convening of groups that have shared interest in Phragmites management, may already be working on it. Many people obviously doing either roadside or other type of management efforts, and people that are inclined or interested or know there's a problem and want to figure out how to be involved. So that involves, as Kyle said, municipalities as a main audience, but also conservation authorities and other rights holders and other interests. So the intention was that we would help these people and encourage them to convene, and with the tools that are available, help them to do collectively better work and more effective action. Next slide. Yeah, so we've contracted with a number of actors and are looking for more, by the way. So we're interested as one of the outcomes here. If you're in an area that's not underserved or doesn't know about this and wants to get involved, then that's part of this. Our intent today is to reach out to you to make sure that as you're interested, that you take advantage of the fact that these working groups are available. And that's really about just sharing best practices, trying to coordinate around the mapping and management planning so that we make the most effective use of our limited resources. And we know this is an expensive problem and a perennial problem, as Kyle said. And the intent is that we would be able to both support and track efforts over time so that we know where and how we're making the best dent in Phragmites challenges, and then have a more sophisticated way to discuss how the work's happening, who's doing what, and how to make best efforts to continue to make a difference here. Next. Yeah, so as I said, this was supported largely through some ongoing efforts. NCC and others have been working on this stuff for years, but the Ministry of Natural Resources dedicated a significant amount of resources to pull this effort together, both to coordinate the work, but also to fund some on the ground work. So that's been through the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund, which is an annual fund. We're in year 2 now. So it started off with some modest grants last year, which we think got a good foothold in many of the communities that were interested. Each year it's getting a little bit larger as we get a little more strategic and want to make bigger and more strategic investments in management and control. And this involves helping people to make sure they've mapped and understand the scope of their problem, and then of course, ideally be into the effective management. So we've had lots of uptake. It was highly oversubscribed this year, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the people and some of the work that's happened so far. Next. So here's some of the people last year that were doing lots of work. So you can see this is just a snapshot, but it's a number of First Nations, some NGOs, a lot of CAs who end up playing a convening role, conservation authorities who work with municipal government, of course, but have a sort of a nature or a lens that sort of cross municipal borders. So they can tend to be a good convener because they've already got the ear and they've already got regular ongoing staff and regular connections with their municipal partners. So a lot of municipalities involved and a lot of other NGOs. But these are the people that have tended to um, have come through the door of the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund, and we've supported their work over the years. So this list is changing over time. We're trying to incent and work with people over multiple years where appropriate and possible. But this is just a snapshot of who's been working and who's been funded through the fund so far. So the whole rationale, or a lot of the rationale with the province, was that this was there's so much work that's happening in this area. It's not just about the environmental impacts, which are significant from Phragmites, but it's about all the time and effort and money that's spent by various actors on this over time. So this is a real jobs discussion. I mean, there's significant amount of effort goes on amongst staff at lots of organizations. Municipalities spend millions of dollars on this. The province is spending, $3 million in central region through MTO on their frag control. This is a real jobs and economic impact, and so this is incenting this kind of work incents and supports a lot of on the ground effort, engages a lot of communities so that we've got more eyeballs on the landscape. There's lots of volunteers. It's being talked about more often because we want to both be managing the existing populations and doing that effectively, but also communicating to avoid further spread, which is a big deal, and making sure that people understand the nature of the problem that we're all working so diligently on. So lots of people involved, 125 municipalities and thousands of other individuals. Next. Yeah, this is just an example. You probably are well attuned to the challenge and the problem, but yeah, we've managed to get it into the news as much as possible because it is a significant investment. People need to appreciate that their public dollars are being well spent, and why are we spending it on this? So lots of stuff in the news, and that's an ongoing part of our um, rationale and our objectives. So yeah, so this was again just a few more stats. Yeah, we've got way more people interested than we have money for, but it's a real sense of the fact that there's so many projects that are good, and we can't support all of them, but we can support them financially, but we can support them through other means, um, and lots of leveraging because this work's already ongoing. We're not responsible for the work, and it can't be all on the backs of this small fund, which is in the millions of dollars, because there's tens of millions of dollars of activity probably going on, but it's our little way of supporting and incenting and coordinating the work. Next. Yeah, so this is, roughly this again at scale. These maps are going to be available more in a more detailed way as we move forward. So we get our GIS all organized. But lots happening in the south, obviously, as Kyle said, and a few fewer in the north, but happening across the landscape. It's a big province. There's a lot of frag, so we're trying to do our best to identify those areas that are most important and where there's the most attention and where we've got the partnerships available to support it. Next. I think we've got a list of some of the examples. Yeah, here we go. I won't spend too much time on this, but it's a combination of, as I said, partners were doing work and all learning from one another. There's a great deal of experience in the network that we want to bring to bear, because it's a both wicked problem. It's challenging and a perennial plant, as you know. So lots of experience over time about what's working and what's not. And because it likes its feet wet, it's a challenge because it's growing not only in roadsides and into wetlands and stormwater ponds, but also into all manner of natural areas that are difficult physical environments and present problems related to some of the more effective controls like the herbicide management. So we've got a number of First Nations doing a whole bunch of work. They have a great lens on things and considering Phragmites as a part of the overall population and and traditional uses and cultural practices. So another important set of partners that have seen the impacts and are doing what they can. Um, so lots of good work going on with dozen or more First Nations across the province. Next. Kyle spoke to Long Point, and there's a ratepayers association there that's a really important part of the groundswell and community support that goes along with the sort of agency or organizational support that comes through the province, the federal government, Nature Conservancy, and other NGOs. So it's important that in this particular area that there was strong and ongoing engagement, investment, and support through the local community and ratepayers groups. Yeah, I mean, I don't need to belabor all these. There's lots of work going on. Monos, there's their challenge. You can see how tall it is there, and this is getting at both the environmental impacts and, of course, all the impingements on infrastructure and roadways. Okay. So the intent of the program is to try and coordinate the big province and make best use of our resources collectively. So we've arbitrarily divvied up the province, which is always a trick. So there's four of us that are trying to coordinate in our respective areas. There's a northern area that's sort of the North Bay and north and west. There's Eastern Ontario, which is, and I'll list off the coordinators in a future slide, but that's coordinated by Matt Bolding at Ducks Unlimited. The central area is where I'm mostly working, and that is from Nipissing to Niagara, which is a large, curious thing to call central. And then Kyle is responsible for everything sort of Collingwood and in the southwest. Lots of work to be done. And so the idea is that there's a focal point and a contact person that anyone can speak to if they have questions, want to get involved, or want to know who's doing work in the area. So next. Yeah, so here's the list, I guess, and a little bit about what's happening in each of the areas, just so you know. So Darissa is our colleague in Sault Ste. Marie at the Invasive Species Center. In the north, as Kyle said, it's a little different situation. It's mostly pioneering kind of species. There's a chance maybe to get ahead of it. So that's a little bit different take and trying to engage in organizations, the municipalities and MTO in particular, uh, around management and control, understanding the problem and trying to get ahead of it. So that's a big part of her priorities there is just to get people's heads around it and get organized. There's already great work going on, particularly in Thunder Bay, but and others across the area. That's kind of a rough area where she's been working. Next. Okay, yeah, I don't need to go through this. She's working with all right to the southwest, Kyle. Way to go. Anyways, I'll just say Doris is working with First Nations and municipalities and conservation authorities, so a classic combination for the program. Kyle's is Habitat Restoration Manager, as he may have mentioned, with NCC. So he's got a number of hats, but he's also trying to coordinate the work through this very dense Phragmites area and supporting the existing efforts that are ongoing. So that's, as he mentioned, there's lots of coastal wetlands that are being impacted, and trying to work through some of the established groups, but also trying to coordinate and facilitate new regional efforts. So lots going on around forming new Phragmites management areas, but also supporting some of the existing efforts that are going on. So there's a bunch of efforts there that some of you may be familiar with and near. And if you're in an area that's not being served, as far as you can tell, then please reach out to Kyle. In Yeah, Matt's doing work in the east and mostly with the CAs in Quinte and Cataraqui, but also looking for some future coordination through Mississippi and Rideau Valley, just kind of a missing link in the middle there, and also at the northeast end through the city of Ottawa and the capital region. So coordinating the work there, and I'll put their contact. The contacts will be up afterwards at the end too. So Matt got some other things. Yeah, so he's working again with a number of CAs with the River Institute in Cornwall, and a lot of mapping work ongoing, and mostly roadway control, I think, in the initial phases, because that's where they've identified the biggest problem and maybe the easiest thing to start with. So that will be an ongoing and growing effort, but mostly roadways in Cataraqui. And River Institute, of course, is involved in the coastal areas of the St. Lawrence and Lake Ontario. So yeah, there's from my area, it's obviously well established everywhere. So we've again trying to coordinate the people that are doing the work already and finding new partners to make sure that we're making best efforts. So I might have a few examples of who I've been working with. Yeah, so again, a bit of a mix. There's some people working on coastal work on Georgian Bay. There's the Georgian Bay Forever has been working on this stuff for a long time. Again, a unique kind of approach, mostly all aquatic and all by boat, and mostly manual work. Severn Sound PMA, which is represents the 8 municipalities in that area, and they're coordinating the work. Excuse me, coordinating the work again, primarily roadside in that region. Credit Valley Conservation is carrying on with their work on invasive species generally, and coordinate obviously through their municipal partners for their priority ecological areas. So that's sort of been their focus. Next. The Durham area, Phragmites management areas, a very popular group. So it's got a number of conservation authorities involved. Toronto Conservation being coordinated by Central Lake Ontario Conservation Authority, but also Ganaraska and Lake Simcoe Conservation all sort of have their fingers in that. Most of the work that's being done there is going to be led by the region of Durham. So that's coordinating the lower tiers. There's already a ton of work going on in Ajax and Pickering and elsewhere in the region, but this coming year is going to be, we'll see the region take a bit of a lead in terms of mapping and trying to drive some coordinated action, because it's very pervasive across that region. And Niagara region, likewise, there's a lot of new work going on, both in the city of Niagara Falls, the town of Pelham, and with the Conservation Authority to do a mix of control and management mapping and planning. So lots of people doing lots of work, and we're happy to support the work ongoing and new work that's happening. Next. Oh yeah, so we've always looking for new areas. We are looking for some more coordinated effort to support the different parts of the province. We're not picking favorites. We're just trying to find where we might be of use and fill a bit of a gap. So those are some of the areas I'm looking at. And again, happy to hear your thoughts. Yeah, okay. So what do we got here, Kyle?
Yeah, I
We got
think
the control
pass it
fund,
back
we
to
got
me.
the biological control, genetic testing. You want to
Yeah,
take over?
sure, sounds good. And before I get to this, so apologies, we did jump through a couple slides quickly in terms of the locations and things, but happy to at any point. We're going to provide a slide, as Terry mentioned, with the contacts for each one of the regional coordinators. There's lots of growth that's happening in terms of wanting to develop these working groups over the next year, next couple of years as well. The program runs for next fiscal year as well, and we are anticipating to continue on. So we're hoping to help develop as much as we can and do as much as we can in this first 3 years in terms of helping support those working groups, but also have them in place so that it helps continue this program as well as helps with those local that fundraising that's happening on that local level too, and making sure if you're showing that overall collective effort that's going on, it's a better return on investment and what other economic jargon helps bring in the funding for projects. We're looking to support that as well. So in addition to the working groups, we mentioned a few things. Terry talked a little bit about the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund. As well, there's some other interesting things that are happening in the world of Phragmites. Biological control is another one. And I'll talk a little bit about that and how we're trying to facilitate and support that where possible. Genetic testing support for invasive Phragmites. We also have a native Phragmites. So in areas in the north where it's still readily common to see the native species, it being able to identify the correct species is really important when it comes to the management because we don't really want to impact the native plant. It doesn't grow and become as excessive of an issue as the invasive. And then some of the training that we're undertaking as well. So, I won't get into too much detail about the Phrag Fund. This is our fifth cycle that's happening this year, and there's been over 70 projects since 2020 that have been supported. Last year was 38. So this year, I'm not sure on the specifics right now in terms of the funding and which ones are going to be funded, but basically we had this is an older slide, but it is now closed. We had a run in February for the fund. We're anticipating another run of the Invasive Phragmites Control Fund this upcoming winter as well. So, be sure to apply. It's open to municipalities, and really, being able to coordinate some of that work with and show collaboration really is helpful in terms of securing some funding for the work that you're doing as well. So it is available for that boots on the ground work and really helping to amplify and expand the control that's happening. So some of the objectives, and I know Terry didn't mention these, so I'll walk through them, but I want to make sure we leave a good amount of time at the end too for questions. But mapping and developing integrated collaborative plans is really important. So looking at kind of that working group, watershed scale, being able to have a multi-year approach. The funding is only good for 1 year through this fund at a time. But being able to show that long-term vision is really helpful for securing funding as well as identifying other sources of funding to match. The better we can match, the better we can leverage the dollars, the better we can work on the landscape to get things done in some cases. We want to see projects that are going to amplify and expand the efforts that are ongoing for Phrag control. And in some cases, it's that leading edge. There's some interest in prioritizing work in the north where it hasn't become established. The return on investment of control is way better in that early prevention and early detection, rapid response before it becomes that large scale issue that you're managing year after year. But there's obviously funding that's available for those larger ones, and showing that collaboration is really important. Again, mapping, monitoring, planning, control, and then certain things with Phragmites innovation as well. We look into is are these good uses of new tech. So the funds themselves, they're it's closed right now. I apologize for this, but it will be open again for another run this winter. In addition to the funding, we do provide genetic testing. I mentioned before that there is a very close, it's actually the same species, it's just a different subspecies or genotypic difference between the invasive Phragmites that we have here that was introduced from Europe and the native Phragmites that it is found on every continent except for Antarctica. And so we do have one that has existed in North America for quite a long time. It doesn't grow nearly as quick and as thick as we see the invasive. It's more of a natural part of our ecosystem in a sense. You might see dominant stands where it's, the core plant that's there, but we're not seeing it, completely altering landscapes the way the invasive does. So, there are some good keys. So Michael McTavish is one of the researchers that works on biological control. Him and his team had identified some really good ways to identify the native versus invasive. Looking for mold or like mold spots or round spots on the stem. Usually they're more of a reddish brown for the native, but often, it can be really difficult to identify between the two, and you have overlapping features for both. So we do offer genetic testing. Feel free to reach out to any one of the regional coordinators. We can put you in touch with Alex Poticat at Invasive Species Center, who's leading the work. What he'll do, he'll send out a sample kit. See if I have here's a picture of the sample kit here. Basically, it gives you some information, some envelopes and desiccant bags to keep the samples nice and preserved. Tells you what to collect, where to collect it. From there, it's got a stamped return envelope. It'll go off to Invasive Species Center, and they provide it to, I believe, Trent University that does the genetic work. And then we provide that information prior to the fall field season. So sampling, I believe, runs until the end of June or early July, and we're able to get those responses by mid-August. So last year, here's some of the results from last year from the samples that were collected. The green is the native Phragmites, red is invasive. So there was a lot of work that was done in the Northwest to identify, where invasive Phragmites was, as we're starting to see it increase in that area. And so they've done a great job, kind of in the Sioux and in the in Kenora area and Lake of the Woods to identify, where the invasive and the native frag is. And this does provide, some information for managing to make, for those managers that are doing the work. The native is found in southwestern Ontario as well. We do have some in Long Point. There is some at Turkey Point. There's some at Point Pelee Provincial Park as well, has identified a genetic native strain. So it does exist. It's just in the south, we just see a lot more of the invasive Phragmites that is just kind of outcompeted and, kind of taken over a lot of that range. So it is open right now. There is this link here. We're going to provide a link to the Ontario Phragmites Action Program at the end as well. You can Google it. We'll likely follow up with an email as well with some links, and you can get a Phrag application kit through those avenues. So the time frame, they need to be submitted before July 4th, and the results will come in by August 16th. This will help with management. Management typically takes place mid-August through into early October, depending on what part of the province you're in. And really, a lot of that management as well, it might seem late for plants, and especially one that grows so tall. But at that time, it is a systemic, if you're using a chemical treatment, it's a systemic herbicide that works its way into the roots. At that point of the year, we're missing all the important sensitive timing windows for, nesting birds as well as work in water. So anything, like working around fish and things like that, you have to have your necessary permits in place as well. But we do have those in place, and the work kind of happens in that later season when it's having a really big impact on Phragmites as it's pulling the chemical into the roots, but it's not having as big of an impact on those early nursery days for the rest of our environment. Phragmites, speaking of control, Phragmites biocontrol is another one that's really exciting. In no way is this a silver bullet to invasive Phragmites, but another great tool in the toolbox. As biological control has been classically used for quite some time, and a lot of there's a lot of concerns about introducing something new. So there's a lot of research that goes into it before there's a release of a new insect or agent, I guess. In biological control. So after over 20 years of lab testing to identify, some of the natural predators of Phragmites, and then whittling down the ones that eat other plants, removing those so you only have those specialists that just eat Phragmites. They did 20 years of research to make sure they won't impact other plants, including our native species or our agricultural crops. And since 2019, we've had field releases that have been approved by Canadian Food Inspection Agency and released by University of Toronto with the Agri-Food Canada federal agency. And so to date, there's about 50 sites across Ontario with about 30,000 moths that have been released. There's really good results that are coming back that they're able to overwinter. They're establishing their populations. It's still very early, so the amount that they're feeding, it's not how much they feed, it's where they feed. So it's early in the year. The larvae, they come out as like the eggs are laid under the stem, under the leaf sheaths. They come out in the spring off these old standing dead stands. They jump on the new growth and they burrow through the stem, and this weakens the plant's ability to grow. Kind of impacts their not only their growth, but it creates infection, like potential for infections and secondary impact to the plant, and really just kind of weakens that stand over time. So, we still need those other really effective methods of controlling it, but this will hopefully, in the long run, limit our need to, aggressively manage the plant. So, with the biocontrol in mind, there are opportunities. Feel free to reach out to us. For the most part, we're helping facilitate the researchers and finding sites. They're all set for this year, but they are just kind of slowly developing new, what they're calling nurse sites. So these nursery sites, build up those populations so that we can use those and hopefully spread them out. There's also some training support. So one thing that we did this past 2 months ago is we had a Phragmites management workshop working in collaboration with the Ontario Vegetation Management Association. So there might be folks on your team that have a OVMA membership. This is an organization. They're great in terms of being able to connect. I know there's municipal, industrial folks, nonprofits, Davy Tree, different companies that do different types of vegetation management, or if it's corridor stuff for, say oil or for gas or any pipeline things, that type of work. Really good association in terms of getting some experience. They also provide integrated pest management certification and credits, and we were able to get credits developed for this course, or sorry, this workshop. So folks that were able to show up and attend were able to get a certain amount of credits towards their annual certification for integrated pest management. One thing that we're looking to host this again, before the end of March next year. We're also looking into exterminator license training for municipal staff as well. So please reach out if this is something that's of interest. Right now, we're still working out the details of what we're able to accomplish with this, but happy to help where we can in terms of getting your team up, some support or some capacity building where possible. There's likely going to be other training support that we're developing over the course of the program too. Some online workshops that we'd like to do. One that comes to mind that I'm really interested in doing, it's not going to happen likely before the summer, but this winter, hopefully holding a workshop for how to fill out or how to prepare an application for an extermination over water, for example. So helping people with kind of those nitty-gritty pieces of delivering the work. Beyond that, Terry and I are going to be hitting the road a bunch. I mentioned earlier, and we'll be hitting some upcoming meetings. We were at the Drainage Superintendents of Ontario meeting, the AGM this past year, along with Land Improvement Contractors of Ontario. From municipal perspective of associations, we were at AMO, NOMA, ROMA, also at NOFNEC, Northern Ontario First Nations Environmental Conference. Yep. Okay. And then a few others. OPWG is the Ontario Phragmites Working Group. That meeting takes place in January. Invasive Species Center has a forum. La Tournelle Conservation Symposium. We're trying to hit all the partners we can. and be able to meet. And that in mind, we will be at the AOR's meeting in 2 weeks' time. I will be there. I don't think Terry's going to be there, but happy to chat with anybody who's interested. How can you help? Well, if you're in an area where you're looking to manage Phragmites, reach out to us, in terms of your region to see if there is a working group in place, or if it's an area that we're building, happy to provide some information there. Keep an eye open for the Invasive Control Fund. Best thing is probably the Invasive Species Center's newsletter. If you sign up to that, or I think you can do that through Ontario Frag Action website as well. That'll be coming up in the winter. There's resources I'm going to have in hard copy at the event in a couple of weeks, but online we can send you to the Ontario Phragmites Action website where you can find all of these helpful guiding documents. And help us grow the circle. If there's not much happening in your area, how can we help uh, you know, get that happening? And just in advance of the meeting as well, we were informed someone did have a question about if they're collecting information about Phragmites for, say, roadside work. For example, what information do they collect in terms of, planning or scoping out the work? So best thing that I can suggest is the Phragmites Management Guidebook that I made mention of does have really interesting and helpful information. So just, what I did, I just kind of pulled this from there. There is a section on roads and considerations for doing roadside work for Phragmites management, things that you should consider, or helpful tips, as well with respect specifically to data collection. We do have a list in this document as well that provides that information that's really helpful for developing your management plan. So typically what we do with Nature Conservancy, and we do some roads work here in Norfolk County, as well as we've worked with the township of Pelee on Pelee Island, is we collect what the density is, the size, responsive, who owns the property. If it's on, for the most part, it's all roadside, so we know it's municipal. If it's wet or dry, and that informs if we need what permits we need, and what the site access is like. For roads, luckily it's pretty effective to be able to use like Survey 123 or other Esri, if it's the Field Maps app, or other ones like EdMaps that exist. Really easy to go to collect that information on like a phone or a tablet, and upload into your GIS system. I think that takes us to the end here. Um, Happy to answer any questions that folks have. We've got the contact information here for each one of the regional coordinators, myself and Terry included there, as well as a link to the Ontario Phragmites Action.ca website, and that's where you can find all this great information as well. And so, I don't know, Kelly, maybe we open it up to any questions. I'm not sure. I'll try to navigate it if I can, if there are
Yeah,
any.
absolutely. So if anyone has any questions, you can feel free to unmute yourself to ask any questions. If not, as Kyle and Terry had mentioned before, we're happy to send out some information post webinar and include these links and contact information as well. So you can get that information after the webinar is done. We'll send that out to everyone who registered. So I don't hear anyone, but if you'd like to connect, again, their information is on the screen, or else you can reach out to AORs and we can make that connection as well for you. I just want to thank you for joining in today, and the links for the rest of the webinars will actually be in the e-blast in the newsletter going out in about 10 minutes. So if you want to join in on any webinars for the rest of the week, you'll find the links there. And thank you again to Kyle and Terry for joining us today and sharing all of this information. It is very prevalent throughout the province, as you've shown through your pictures. And so it's great for our members to be able to get that information.
Thanks for having us and your interest.
Yeah, really.
Go ahead, Kyle. Sorry.
Oh no, appreciate it. Yeah, looking forward to being at the meeting or the conference in a couple weeks as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So have a great day, everyone.